Now, one group that's been doing well financially despite the health of the U.S. economy is Congress. More members are millionaires than ever before, and it appears that the people's representatives are not that well representative. Only 1% of the population are millionaires. Now, the richest member of Congress is Darrell Issa, and he is worth $464 million. That makes him 5,000 times richer than the average household in his district. Now, many members own stock companies that benefit from billions in government contracts. Public interest groups say these links create potential conflicts of interest. In fact, you have to be wealthy to run for office in the first place. Now, on average, House candidates spend $1 million for each campaign, and Senate candidates spend more than $9 million. Now, Jason Johnson is a professor of political science at Hiram College in Ohio. He joins us live now from Atlanta. Jason, thank you very much for joining us on the show. Are we naive to think that our politicians, or the U.S. politicians, should have average incomes and therefore be true representatives of their constituents?
Yes, that's very naive, and that's never been the case in American history. If you look back at the Constitutional Convention, they initially had an argument as to whether or not people who didn't have land should have the right to vote. Our members of Congress have always been wealthier, older, whiter, and more male than the average population in the United States. Now, income inequality has gotten worse over the last 10 or 12 years, but Congress has never been demographically representative of the American people.
All right, so then just explain to us, how does this actually impact on policy making? How do you get this, or are these wealthy club members, can they relate to the real problems of their average voters?
No, not at all. And that's what we've seen a lot of the economic problems we've been having in this country for the last really 10 to 12 years. Look, almost every single member of Congress votes for an extension of tax cuts for the wealthy. Almost every member of Congress has been fighting, certainly on the Republican side in recent years, against extending unemployment insurance. These men and women are absolutely disconnected from most of the people. Some of that is because they have been wealthy their entire lives, and some of that is because they forgot the poverty that they came from. And that's the difficulty. You don't have to be rich to run for Congress, but by the time you're in Congress, you're probably rich.
But at the same time, though, as you said, we're not naive to be able to understand that this sort of things happens. The average American understands that this does happen. They know that they're voting in a wealthy person who is probably going to get wealthier in office. So why do they keep voting them in?
Because Americans have no problem with rich people as long as you're the right kind of rich person. In the United States, if you're Bill Gates, if you built something we can see or touch or eat, if you opened up a franchise, if you were a professional athlete, that's something Americans can understand as wealth. The kind of rich people that we don't like are people like Mitt Romney, who basically made his money by shuffling around other people's wealth. So it's not so much Americans don't like rich people, but you have to make your money the right way. If you inherit it or just shuffle things around, that's something we don't respect.
All right, now, Jason, there is a growing income gap in the U.S., as we've just seen a little earlier in the program. While the politicians sit comfortably in their offices, how do you see this playing out in the upcoming midterm elections in November?
I think this is going to be a huge issue. Basically, President Obama was reelected in 2012 by saying the way we have run our economy over the last 35 years no longer works. He made an argument for trying to solve the income gap in this country. That's what he's bringing back for 2014. I think it's a very powerful message. It's one that resonates with many, many Americans. The only challenge is that this year it's congressional midterm. So that message of income inequality has to be spread out amongst hundreds of members of Congress, not just one person running for office. But I think it's something most Americans are still concerned about.
I want to bring you back to something a little earlier that you said, that a lot of these politicians are wealthy. They come into office being wealthy, and then they go on to become even wealthier. But let's take President Barack Obama. He was a community leader.
Right. Well, here's the thing. If you look at how members of Congress get into office, many of them start off small. They're local farmers or lawyers, and they get on city council, and then they become mayors. They gain wealth as they get higher in office, and that's also how they meet more wealthy people to pay their way. Barack Obama is the poorest president that the United States has ever elected, which is one of the reasons why he talks about income inequality, but he got millions and millions of dollars from bankers, from Wall Street, and from corporate Fortune 500 companies. So even he had to realize that even to get the Senate, he had to get rich people's money, even if he wasn't a rich person himself.
All right, how then do we level out the playing field so that the average American can get into politics?
The way we average out the playing field is, one, by changing how politicians can raise their money, and then two, taking a real hard look at who we're re-electing. I mean, look, just because you're rich doesn't mean that you can't serve your constituents. But all too often, I think American citizens think, oh, it's a pox on both houses. I don't like Republicans. I don't like Democrats. If we took more time and effort to look at the actual policies that these men and women were voting for, we'd not look at their pocketbook, but we'd look at how they were voting on our pocketbooks. And that's really the only way to change it, at the ballot box.
Jason, great talking to you. Thank you very much. Jason Johnson there, Professor of Political Science at Hiram College in Ohio.